Hi everybody, I'm Anthony Reggiano and I have a few announcements to make. Life has been good since I recovered from cocaine addiction. I'm happy to say it's been coming up on 34 years that I'm clean. I also created an Anthony Reggiano Jr. Recovery Helpline, and I'm going to give you that number right now. If you need help or you know someone that needs help, please call me. The number is 855-963-2113. I'm going to repeat that. It's 855-963-2113. So if someone you know or yourself needs help, please don't hesitate to call me. And in spite of giving back to society, I've been named an ambassador to Face the Music. Face the Music Foundation is a foundation that helps people that can't afford drug treatment and alcohol treatment. They provide scholarships for people to go into treatment. They actually pay for the treatment because not everybody has insurance. So unfortunately, there's some people out there suffering from addiction that can't afford to go to treatment. And so this foundation supplies the money for treatment, which is schooling and drug prevention and recovery. And treatment is very important because in my own personal story, if it wasn't for the treatment center I was lucky enough to go to, I would probably be dead right now, because that treatment center gave me the tools to recover. So this foundation affords people those tools to change their life. Thanks for tuning in. We just went over 8,000 subscribers. If you like my content, whack the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. In Ozone Park, I mean, you had Vinny Asara had a club. He was in the Bonanno family. Cero Perone had a club. He was in the Genovese family. My father had a club, the Gambino family. John and Charlie Wagons had a club, Gambino family. Big Funzy, he had a club. He was in the Genovese family. I mean, there was clubs on every street corner, and everybody had a charter. So a charter was something that you applied for with the city to have a gathering in a place where you could have parties and you could play cards and you could have liquor. You couldn't sell the liquor, but you could have liquor, but they used to sell it sometimes. So my father had a veteran. My father had like really one of the best charters. He had a veterans charter, and how he got that was friends of his that were veterans in World War II. They got the charter, like they went and applied for the charter and they got granted the charter, and it used to hang in my father's club. It was gold. The veterans charter was the best one you could have. And most of the clubs had a charter. And on Mulberry Street, it was the same way. On Mulberry Street, every block there was a club. The Ravenite, I mean, every block there was a club. They're all gone. On Mulberry Street, and like Charlie West had a club on Mott Street, Neil's club, the Ravenite was on Mulberry Street. There was clubs up and down, and then the Chin had his club on Sullivan Street, on the west side. So, and everybody had a charter. It was just a meeting place. That's where the day started. You went in, we had marionette machines, we had poker tables. Like I'll talk, our club, the Cafe Liberty. When I was a kid, my father always had a club. He always had a social club. When I was a kid and I hung out with him, he had a social club in East New York. He had it on top of a beer distributor on Eastern Parkway, right off Atlantic Avenue. And he had a pigeon coop on the roof. And it was, he had poker tables and a dining table, and then he had a kitchen. And it was just a gathering place where everybody met and they ate, they cooked in there, they made lunches in there. And it was somewhere where everybody knew where to get in touch with you, and they played cards. It's just like a social club, like an Elks Club, or any one of those clubs, the Knights of Columbus Club. The same atmosphere, just criminals. Yeah. My father, first of all, ran the Tapers Union, which was the sheetrock union. That was my father's union. My father ran that union for the Gambino family. So he had an inward construction because he had the tapers union. You know, the mob ran all the unions, and my father had the tapers union. And then my father had a drywall company with this guy, Michael. You know, Sammy was big in the construction business, and my father was very, very tight with the guy that straightened Sammy out. This captain that straightened Sammy out, that proposed Sammy. My father was very close to him. They went back together to the Anastasia days. They were in the same regime. They were both wise guys in the same regime as Albert Anastasia, and Tommy was their captain. So that my father had a lot of history with Sammy the Bull mentor, more or less. Sammy always talks highly of him, of the guy that straightened him out. And so we went to Sammy's office, construction office. That was the first time I met him many, many, many years ago. And then I used to see him in his Club Plaza Suite. We used to go there all the time. My father, he had a disco in Brooklyn called Plaza Suite. A matter of fact, I used to go up there. The last time I was up there, matter of fact, I was up there with my father and my sister, and we would hang out. An alley boy was there, the kid alley boy Persico, who's doing life now, who was Carmine's son, who became the boss of the Colombo family. At one point, he was up there, and he was hanging out with us, with me, him, and my father and my sister, and we were laughing and talking. Matter of fact, that's the last time I might have saw him too. So I used to run across Sammy there at Plaza Suite. I didn't go there often, and every time I did go to that club, I was actually with my father. My sister used to hang out up there, so my father would go up there to, you know, see my sister, and I would be with him, and we would go up there because my sister used to go up there with her friends. And so I would see him up there, and then, you know, then he became the underboss, and that was kind of surprising. You know, that came out of left field. I mean, we had no clue that was happening, you know, that he was going to, because Frankie DeChico was the underboss, and then he got blown up, you know, and, you know, John needed someone from Brooklyn, or someone that knew that crew, Paulie Castellano's crew. And, you know, that's why that remark was made that got back to me. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. I have to believe it probably was true that John made remarks at MCC that if Fat Andy was home, he wouldn't be in this mess, because he might have made my father the underboss, because my father would have been really in a good position for that because everybody liked him. He was respected by all the families, and he was respected by that crew in Brooklyn. You know, he was around from the 50s, so he had a lot of respect. So John needed someone to, you know, make peace, and Sammy was in the right place at the right time, and Sammy became the underboss. And, you know, then I would see Sammy at the Ravenite. When I would go to the Ravenite with Tony Lee, you know, Sammy was always at the Ravenite, and I would see him in the Ravenite, and we would talk, we would laugh, you know, kid around, you know. I would go, you know, like I would go there with girls. Like the feast would be on San Genarro, and I would be there with a girl, and I would go to the Ravenite with the girl, and they would just like, Pete Gotti and Sammy would just like laugh and shake their head, you know. Pete used to call me his hero because I was always with nice looking girls, you know, because he looked like a cyclops, you know what I mean, with his eye, you know, he had a bad eye. And so, yeah, and, you know, and he was always, you know, nice to me. You know, I never had an intimate relationship with the guy. You know, I knew he was a killer. I knew he was a tough guy. You know, he was a gangster, you know. He was the underboss, so I respected him. You know, Tony Lee, you know, not that he wasn't happy about it. Tony was old school. You know, he was really old school, Tony Lee, you know. So like a lot of things that went on, he didn't agree with. You know, he didn't agree with a couple of guys that got killed. He was very friendly with them, and they got clipped, and he wasn't, you know, happy about that, you know. Well, he wasn't happy about who actually killed them, because he was so old school and so mafia that he believed like wise guys, other friends should be killed by friends, not Irish guys or German guys or English guys. And, you know, John used to use Joe Watts a lot, and he was English. So Tony Lee wasn't happy about that Sammy and John would use Joe Watts. Everybody could say whatever they want to say, but right now in this genre, Sammy and Mike Francis are on the top, you know, and we're all fighting our way up the hill, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, I think honesty and being real and is gonna move the people in the right direction, because, you know, the people that aren't being real and honest, you know, that's going to all come to the surface at one point. But Sammy used to stand like this and make you shake John's hand first, because John was the boss. And that used to drive Tony Lee crazy. We would get back in the car and he would go, and he would, you know, he just didn't like it, Tony Lee. But, you know, listen, I got along with everybody. You know what I mean? I got along with everybody. I mean, I had my beefs with wise guys. I had beefs with the Genovese family. You know, I had sit downs with other families, you know, some arguments I won, some arguments I lost. I had sit downs with bosses. I had sit downs with underbosses, you know, with captains. That was the life. You know, I was in it. You know, I was in it. And I listened to people that talk about being in the life, and I never even heard of them. Who knew these people? Who knew them? Who killed 230 guys? I never heard of them. I never heard of these people. People ask me, you know so-and-so? No, I never heard of them. They laugh. They asked me in LA about somebody. I said, I never heard of the guy. He's claiming he killed 230 people. Who knew him? I never heard of him. Did I hear of Sammy the Bull? Yeah, he was real. Did I hear Michael Francis? Yeah, he was real. You know, I heard of a lot of people. You know, he did good. The family was thriving. Everybody was happy. I mean, everybody was happy. Tony was in a good position. We were all in a good position. You know, it really didn't have any bearing on us, because we were tight with John. So, you know, we were tight with John. So, I mean, but nobody was complaining. You know, nobody, to my knowledge anyway. I mean, none of us were complaining. You know, it had no bearing on me. You know what I mean? Yeah, nobody was complaining. I mean, Sammy was an earner. You know, Sammy made a lot of money for a lot of people, and he was dangerous. So, you know, you're not going to really go badmouth the guy. You know what I mean? You got to be careful. He's the underboss. Like, you know, what are you going to go around calling him names and you know, you might get popped in the head. you know what I mean? So you got to be careful. So I was in prison. I was in reception actually in '91, in the summer of '91. I was in this place called it was Otisville. It was a state prison, but it was all reception. Like it was where you went from the county jails in the 5 boroughs. You would go to this place. If you did state time, you would go to this place, the state prison in Otisville, and you would go there and they would give you your state number, and you would stay there, and, you know, and that was called reception. And then from there, they would bus you out to where you were going to start your time. And I was in there with some guy who's a wise guy now. His name is Bobby, but he had a nickname. His nickname was Bobby the Jew, but he wasn't Jewish. That's just what they called him. He was Italian. And I was in there with him, and, you know, we knew each other we were in this, you know, he was in the Gambino family, and I was pretty good friends with him in the street. You know, I knew him, and he used to always be in the Ravenite. He was very close with John. So we knew each other very well. And he knew my father, of course. So we would walk the yard every night, him and I. We would go out to the yard every night, him and I, and we would walk around the yard and, you know, bullshit, you know, because we knew each other, and it was, you know, nice to have somebody that you know from the street, you know. And every night we would go walk around the yard. So one night I went out to the yard, and he was a little late, you know, and I'm out there waiting for him. And finally he came out and he goes, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "That guy, that's what we used to call John, that guy." We knew that was John. He would go, "That guy's co-defendant flipped." And I went, "Who, Frankie?" Like Frankie Loke it was Frankie Loke, Sammy, and John. I said, "Who, Frankie?" And he says, "No, the other one." I said, "Sammy?" Like I was in shock. I was like in shock. I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "No." He goes, "Sammy flipped." I said, "Oh," and I just looked at him, and like I just felt like I felt sick, because I just looked at him and I said, "That's the end of John." It was crazy after Paul got clipped. The day he got killed, I was sitting on my couch at home. It was freezing out that day, and I was watching TV. I lived on 88th Street, and you know, it came on a bulletin on the TV, like, and I saw it, and I said, "Oh shit!" And I jumped up and I ran to the kitchen phone, and I called Tony Lee right up immediately. And I go, "They clipped Paul," and he went, "I know," and I said, and I knew right away, just by the tone in his voice, I knew right away, like he knew, you know what I mean? Like he didn't just find out, like he knew that it was, you know what I mean? Just by the tone of his voice. I said, oh, you knew? And I went, okay. And I hung up the phone. Yeah. So, and that was it. You know, after John became the official boss, he had like a big Christmas party, which I went to with Tony Lee. And it was like every wise guy, the whole family was there. Like every member of the Gambino family was there, and everybody, every associate that was probably going to get made was there. And, you know, it was crazy. I mean, the FBI were out there taking pictures. I mean, they showed me pictures from that night years later. It was just a very festive time. The Ravenite was standing room only. You couldn't even get, like, if you went to the Ravenite, you couldn't even get in the front door. That's how many bodies were inside the Ravenite. Everybody was up John's ass. The whole world was up John's ass. You know, but then Frankie got killed, and, you know, then bad stuff happened. You know, Eddie, my friend Eddie Lino, I was pretty tight with him. I used to work with him, Eddie. We used to go to Yankee games together. He was a captain. He got killed. You know, Bobby Burriello got killed. You know, they were trying to kill John. They were trying to kill Nicky Carrazza. So, you know, there was good times and bad times until everything got straightened out. You know, it was good for us that John became the boss. I mean, it was good for me. He liked me. For some reason, like he liked me, you know what I mean? I don't know. He just liked me. He was always good to me. You know what I mean? Like, it was, you know, it was just one of those things. I don't know, like, because he could be abusive. Like I saw him like really abuse people, verbally abusive and dangerous, you know, and kill you, you know what I mean? But he was very verbally abusive at times. I mean, you know, belittle guys. Like he was so verbally abusive sometimes that you got embarrassed for the guy he was abusing. Like that's how bad it was. Like you like wanted to walk away because you know, or cover your ears because you felt bad for the guy. You know what I mean? Like, so, but he never did that to me. So for me, it was good. You know, like I would walk in the Ravenite and, you know, like now a lot of new faces were showing up, like guys that I never saw before, like guys from the Bronx and guys from, you know, Staten Island or Brooklyn guys, like, you know, Manhattan guys. Like I would go in the club on Saturday afternoon because he would eat lunch every Saturday in the Bergen Fish Club. And I would go in and there would be wise guys in there and captains that I didn't know, you know, from the Bronx or somewhere. Like I didn't know them. And I would walk in and he would see me, you know, because he always, when you walked into the club, the table was here, the table where everybody ate at. And he always sat at the far end. Like he never sat with his back to the door. He was always at the far end looking at the door, and the kitchen was behind him. The kitchen in the club was behind him. When you walked in, there was a couch and a TV where people sat on the couches and watched the TV. And then there was a table that everybody ate at. So I would walk in and he would see me and he would, oh, come here, come sit here. And there would always be an coincidence or whatever. There would always be an empty chair right near him. And he would see me. Like if I got there after like a lot of other people arrived, he would see me and go, oh, come here, come sit down, come sit over here. And all these wise guys would like eyeball him, like, who is this fucking guy? Like they would be eyeballing me. And he would catch it and he would go like this, what are you staring at? It's Fat Andy's son, Anthony. Oh my God, Fat Andy, oh. And then they would all fawn over Fat, and I'm, oh, how's your father? What a guy. Tell him I'm so-and-so sends his love. A couple of them would give me money, say, here, put this in his commissary. You know, when they were leaving here, here's 500, here's 300. Please give it to your father, put it in his commissary. You know, and he would sit and he would whisper in my ear. He would say to me, you think these guys ever ate a bologna sandwich? Like, you know, because that's what you get in jail, bologna sandwiches, you know, because he knew me and him ate bologna sandwiches. And I go, I doubt it. He goes, they never did a fucking day in jail. None of these guys, what do they know about bologna sandwich? And then he would start picking on them, like making jokes, and they wouldn't even know what we were talking about. And then sometimes he would tell me, come on, come outside and take a walk with me. And they would and we would go outside and talk about the Yankees, like he, you know, like, or horse racing or something. He just wanted to go out like and get a breath of air. And they would all be staring like, oh, what is he talking to this kid about? You know what I mean? Like, you know, because it was comical, really, it was comical. He thought the hit was spectacular. He said it was a great move. It was a great way he was very impressed. He goes, that was the best way to do it in broad daylight, in a crowd. He was very impressed with it. And he even made a joke about it because when we told him, because we went up there to visit him, me and Tony Lee, and so Tony Lee could lay everything out for him, and he was teasing. He goes, John Gotti. He goes, is this the same John Gotti we know from when he was a kid that orchestrated this? Like, he was joking. Is this the same John Gotti? And somebody goes, yeah, it's the same John. Like, he was impressed, my father. He was impressed. He was impressed about it. He said, because don't forget, he said that he was impressed because you go back in the 50s, they wanted to kill Carlo Gambino in Grand Central Station, and he didn't show up. So yeah, he was impressed. He thought it was a really good move, a really good plan, and it was. If Sammy didn't cooperate, they would have never convicted anybody for that murder. John got convicted for it because Sammy cooperated. He was probably a little disappointed that he wasn't home, because he would have been if he was home, he would have been in a really good position. He would have been in a really good position with them, because he had a very good relationship with Angelo Quack and John and all of them. Like, he had a really, like, they had a lot of mutual respect for each other. They were all sort of the same type of person. They were tough guys and killers and gangsters. And I think he was a little, like, disappointed that he wasn't home for that, because he knew, like, if he was home for that, I think all our lives would have been different today. I mean, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. Yeah, all our lives would have been different. So,
Okay. So when you were on the street, did you ever have any dealings with anyone from Chicago?
No, I didn't personally have dealings with anybody in Chicago, but my father knew some people in Chicago that they actually, when I got married in 1977, they sent me envelopes for my wedding, because years before that, in the probably in the early 60s, my father and Neil Delacroce used to entertain the underboss at the time of Chicago. When he would come to New York, they would take him out for dinner. I don't remember his name anymore. It's been a lot of years, but my father had relationships with a couple of guys from Chicago, but I personally never did. But I did get some envelopes from them at my wedding in 77. They sent some wedding gifts to me.
What was the perception of the Chicago outfit in terms of from the New York families, from your crew or from the Gambino family? How did you guys, were they respected?
Oh yeah, big time. Very strong, very well respected. Yep. Yeah, I mean, they were one of the most powerful families in the country. They had a big position on the commission. They were very well respected. Yeah, big time. Even my father used to tell me that Sinatra was with the Chicago mob. Technically, he was on record with them, Frank Sinatra with Chicago. So they were very well respected. Yeah, they had a lot of influence, and they had a lot of money. So they had a lot of ins in Hollywood, and all that stuff was pretty true. So yeah, they were very, very well respected.
What did you guys think about the Sicilian faction of the Gambino? Like, how powerful were they within the family during your time?
Well, they were powerful when Carlo Gambino was alive, naturally, because that was his crew. He was Sicilian. My father was Napolitan. He wasn't really, I mean, he was friendly with, like the Napolitans and the Sicilians didn't really see each eye to eye. Like, there was a lot of prejudice there. But yeah, they had a lot of influence, and a lot of them were heroin dealers, on the down low. They had a lot of influence. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of power. And, my father got along with all of them. When John became the boss, they sort of had to take a back seat to everything, because, John was Napolitan. John's family and my father's family come from the same town in Naples. They were paisans. So, yeah, they had to take a back seat. And now, again, they're in control again. So, yeah, they had a lot of power. And, but when John was the boss, they took a little bit of a back seat.
Were there any ties to the Detroit area?
Back in the 70s, we had something going in Detroit in the racetracks, and my father had to come up there and have a sit down with them, because they didn't want us they ran the racetrack, and they didn't want us in the racetrack, and my father had to come up there and have a sit down with them and straightened it out. But we never really had any other dealings with them, with the Detroit mob. But they're still there. They're still around. They own restaurants now. They own all Italian restaurants.
I always wondered if they were associated with the trucking company, or he was related to
they were associated with. They went big time. They were very influential with the Teamsters. That's where Hoffa disappeared in Detroit. I mean, you can't get more into the Teamsters than that. Thanks for joining Reform Gangsters. And don't forget to whack that like button and subscribe and hear the bell ring. Until next time. And, we have a lot of content out there, so check it out.